Ooh, okay.
Sorry, Patricia?
Okay, here we go.
Our group. From the museum's point of view, what's the name of our group?
Collectors group and fellows.
Collectors, okay.
The talk though is called A Think and a Drink.
Yeah, I got that, but collectors and what?
Fellows.
I thought it was called Think and Drink, so we could have multiple drinks, but you're saying it's limited to one?
Yes.
Just take
No
out the
drinking and driving. How about thinking and drinking?
I
guess
I'm all for
everyone's full now,
pairings,
right?
you know.
You can have as many as you want.
Hi, Paul.
How are you? How's everybody?
Good.
Oh, this is great.
Good to see you.
Oh, Karen and Alan are on it. Great.
Stockton.
Can you guys do a picture, Karen and Alan?
Are they being shy?
I know, probably get started
A couple
in just a
minutes
few
and then
minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So, what is the status with the museum? It's closed now, or there's? I got the email. Okay.
yes, we're closing for at least 30 days. Okay.
What's going to be the impact on 30 Americans then?
Good question.
Lots of questions.
We don't know, yeah.
No, I don't know the answer to that one.
Future is uncertain.
Yeah, a lot of the exhibition schedules are in flux.
Gene, I can just see your glasses. I can't see your whole thing. There you go.
It's very film noir, though. I like it. Don't tell him. Don't tell him.
Yes, it is.
You should be in black and white, though.
I don't know if you've seen the. I don't know if you've seen the today's New York Times, but apparently Raphael, it's his 200th year since he died,
Oh.
and then they are giving there's various tours online, and there's one tour that you pay them. It's a live online tour. So I don't know if you've seen that. It was kind of interesting. They had a lot of links to a lot of videos on YouTube. So I didn't realize it was a big year for Raphael. So.
Oh, it is. Yes. Yeah, that I think it was in Europe and also at the National Gallery in Washington. Where did you find your YouTube of it?
There's different links, but it's on the New York Times. You can go online and see it. So. Then let me see. I didn't realize he died when he was 37 years old. Is that right?
I'm sorry?
Oh, Raphael. How old was he when he died?
I don't know, but I'll find out.
That's what Google's for.
Maybe I'm confused. I'm reading a book now about the various economic philosophers, and I think it's Adam Smith that died at 37. Oh.
Right.
Anyway, it's something in the New York Times. So.
Thanks for sharing that. Lots of looking into it. If it's all right, I think we're gonna do our official start to our first virtual Think and a Drink. So thank you all for showing up. Very exciting. We weren't sure how many people were going to log on, so I'm glad we have a good group of folks. And just a few housekeeping things before we start. This is being
I know where the
recorded.
bathroom is now.
You know where the bathroom is. You got your drinks. You're good to go, Paul.
Yeah, snack.
This is being recorded, so just be cognizant of that. You know, if you have your video and your mic on. If you make any silly faces, they will be in the Homa records forever. And once we start the presentations, if you could just mute yourself so that there's no extra sound or distraction from the presenter. If you look at the top of your screen, you can click your view and change that. So you can change it to who's talking, and that'll give you the full big screen of whoever's on. And that'll allow you to have the best view of the presenter. And if you have any questions or comments for any of the presenters, if you could just write it in the chat, and Chingjen will monitor that, and we will do a general Q&A for everybody at the end. So if you could just write question for Matt, and then go ahead and put your question in, and then at the end, after everybody is finished, we'll go through and shoot the questions at whoever, at the different presenters. And each presenter will be given 10 minutes, and I have a little alarm. So at 9 minutes, I will play this, and hopefully the presenter will know then that it's time to wrap up their presentation. So I think without further, yes, Patricia, did you have a question?
Yeah, on Zoom, I know how to do chat, but on this one, I can't see chat down at the bottom. Where is it? Where is chat?
Oh, it's at the top on the right-hand side. It's the little chat bubble. The little
so it's
bubble.
It's people, it says 17, and then it's a bubble.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, yeah. I'm done.
Okay, great. So I think we're going to start with Matt. If you're good to go, I will put myself on mute like everybody else will, and you can just take it away. I think you have the ability to share your screen and share that beautiful PowerPoint that you have with us.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I'm running the show here with the PowerPoint. I thought you were. Okay. I'm doing it. Okay.
I can run it too if you like. I have it loaded if you would like me to.
Okay. Yeah. I just well, I can. It'll just take me 2 seconds to pull it up.
Great.
Okay. Okay. The first slide. Hold on. I'm not sure I can share this.
Okay, I can go ahead and do that. And then will you just let me know when to hit the next slide?
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay.
No worries.
My bad. I mean, again, too, so just at the stage, this is the first PowerPoint I have ever produced in my entire life, which is crazy. Because I think this technology has been around for how many years? Somehow I've not had an opportunity to use it professionally, but happy to launch into it. So,
will you give me a thumbs up if you guys? Okay. I know. Just let me know next slide, and I'll hit the next slide.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. So first, so my name's Matt Henry. I've been a member of. And I'm blanking on the group right now. What is the name of the group?
Think and a Drink.
Think and a Drink. I know there's a donor name for it. But I've been a member for at least 3 years. and I've really enjoyed my experience with the Honolulu Museum of Art because every month I have access to another part of the museum I cannot access on my own. And so I've really enjoyed just being exposed to things that maybe I otherwise wouldn't pursue or learn about on my own. So I really just appreciate always coming to the museum every month and being challenged when we can. And today I wanted to talk about an experience I had purchasing a piece of art that was really meaningful to me. And I'm basically calling this piece Seeded Bush Yam, which is the name of the piece that I purchased. And this is what I'm calling an Australian Outback Tale when art chooses you, because I was not looking to buy this piece, but I felt like I had to. So I'll tell you that story in 10 minutes or less. Next slide, please.
Right.
Okay, so my journey started in Broome, Australia, which basically I was en route to the Red Center. The only way that I could do that was if I spent a night in Darwin, which would be fortuitous on the next slide, and I'll tell you why. And I got a really good start in Broome because it's an incredibly beautiful place. That's sunset over the Indian Ocean with the sun going down towards Madagascar. It's kind of an artist colony. I tell people that Broome is sort of like if Santa Cruz, California and Kailua had a love child, it would be Broome. And one of the things that they're known for, because I'd love to live there someday, is pearling. And one of the pieces that I went into a shop looking just for pearls to be inspired, and I saw this. And I was like, wow, that's perfect. I don't have any jewelry of my own. And I like this because it was a Tahitian pearl. So I like that combination of sort of tying me to Polynesia and Western Australia, which I love. So it kind of set the stage for what would happen in Darwin. Next slide, please.
Great.
Okay, so I land in Darwin. I have an overnight. I have no plans. Fortunately, I happened to arrive on a Sunday. And coincidentally, I was there the year before visiting friends. And so my friend took me around town and he was like, oh, mate, you won't believe it, but you lucked into a Mindle Beach Sunset Market. Let's go. So I just said, good on ya, take me. So we did. Please, next slide, please. Okay, and so I hit this place called Readback Art, and I was just transfixed that there were just a litany of these beautiful Aboriginal art pieces at very affordable prices. Next slide, please. And you can see some details. They're really, really diverse. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I'm just gonna keep looking. Next slide, please. And the diversity was incredible. And so this was actually inspired sort of a concept that's called dream time, which is basically dreaming for Aboriginal people represents the time when the ancestral spirits progressed over the land and created life and important physical geographic formations and sites. The past of the spirit ancestors, which live on in the legends, are handed down through stories, art, ceremony, and songs. And so to me, that was just very grounding and very inspirational. And so I wanted to find the right piece for me. Next slide, please. Just an example. That didn't speak to me, but I honor its process and its beauty. Next piece, please. And so this is the one where I was literally stopped in my tracks because I looked at this and just thought, wow, I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. But again, I didn't want to make a rushed decision because sometimes when you're traveling, you're super relaxed and you're thinking, then you might come home with something and you're like, what was I thinking? So I have a rule. If it's still in my head 20 minutes later, I'm going to circle back and buy it and find a way to get it home to Hawaii somehow. Next slide, please. And so, I actually went to go get a crocodile burger from a place called the Roadkill Cafe to kill time. And this was incredibly, in my head. And so just tell you a little bit about the piece. It's by an artist by the name of Louise Numina. It's acrylic on canvas. And what I really liked about this vendor was that they promote free trade art. They represent Aboriginal artists and give them 90% of the commissions. So they're not doing this to make money. They're doing this as a service. And as a result, as a potential buyer, it's very affordable. And this specific piece is called as I said before, seeded bush yam. And if I have more time, I'll tell you more about the piece later. Next slide, please. Okay, so I have my crock burger, and then I go back to the vendor and tell them, you know, I'm off to the Red Center. You can see Uluru down below. And just said, you know, do you ship to Hawaii? And they said they would, but it would actually be more than the cost of the painting. And I just said, you know what? About 10 years ago, I was in Queensland, Australia, and I saw the most beautiful Aboriginal art piece. And it was early in my trip, and I decided, excuse me, you know, it was in my head, and I was like, oh, there will be others, and I don't want to jump at the first piece. So I passed on it, and 10 years later, I regretted it. So I was like, we've got to do this. So I just said, you know, I don't care what the cost is, let's do it. It was very affordable, but it was more of a symbolic gesture. Next slide, please. And so I decided to buy it, and I shipped it from through Australian Post. It was actually, I'm wrong on the Evil A framer. It's actually one in Sand Island, and I'm happy to give you the name of the vendor if you're interested. But this is an enormous piece. It's 5 feet by 4 feet. And literally 4 months before I was in Australia, I purchased a new home in Kailua, and I had you know, coming in from a small rental, I had much more space in my house. I had space to fill, and I was like, I know exactly where this is going to go. Next slide, please. And so, so I chose a spot on the left-hand side. I have a house where it's 2 stories, and it's an open space, and we're from the open space looking down into the main room. And I have a small backyard that has some tropical flowers in it. They don't right now, but I knew that some of the colors from the flowers would pick up with the painting, and it would just mesh nicely. So that's where I decided to put it. And ironically, I actually haven't hung it yet because of COVID, but I will. And I look forward to that when I can do that and have them come in and hang multiple things. But at least I have the piece, so my heart is full. Next slide, please. And so really, just in closing, I just wanted to, sort of encourage you that when you're on the road, just to stay open, because I was not going to the Mendel Street Market to buy art. And I just went in with an open mind and, excuse me, found a piece that just really, I couldn't get out of my head, and I knew exactly where it would go in my house. And it just brings me a lot of joy that, I lived in the moment, I didn't have regrets, and someday it will look gorgeous on the wall in my house. Thank you for listening.
Yay! Matt, I didn't even have to ding the timer because you were right on time.
Very good, man.
I'm glad. I can tell you more. I actually have more data, like more background about the artist in the piece, but I feel like I can go into that in the Q&A if you're interested, because she has a cool background.
Very cool. Okay, thank you for sharing.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to go get a whiskey now.
You're
Right back.
the first, right? So this is history being made.
Back in a flash.
Okay. And next up we have Richard Kennedy. So I'm going to toggle it to who's talking, and then if we could all just mute our mics except for Richard, and then he will show up as a large screen on everybody's computer.
Okay, now? Okay. Hi, I am Richard Kennedy, and Jetty suggested we give a little biography. So just by way of background, I have been here with my husband, Stephen, for the last 10 years after we retired. I'm actually from Berkeley, California, born and raised, and went to college. And actually, I'm 4th generation Berkeley, so long time in the Bay Area. But we ended up in Washington, D.C. by crook hook. It was just a strange connection, and we stayed for 30 years. And I was at the Smithsonian for 20 of those years. But I want to talk about another little phase of my life. I'm getting a reiteration of my words. Am I hearing that from you, or?
I think maybe it's on the other computer. If you want.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Try to figure that out. Anyway, I taught at a Gandhian training school in South India for about 3 years in the early 70s. And it was a rare opportunity to be there. I have great love for India, and I get great love for that period of life. And I had some friends who taught at an art school nearby in Kumbakonam. I was in Tanjavur, and if any of you have traveled in South India, you probably went to Tanjavur. It's the home of the Brihadishvara, the great temple of South India. And my house actually looked right into the compound of the temple. But Tanjavur is also the home of the Chola bronzes. The Chola Empire was a great empire in South India between the 10th and 14th century. And the bronzes that come out of it, many people will say, many art historians and even people in India will say it was one of the greatest products of India. So I was very fortunate to be in Tanjore and be in the area where these bronzes are made. You may have heard of the lost wax tradition, but in this, 5 metals are often used and put together. Gold, silver, copper, lead, and brass. And these pieces that I have probably do not have copper or brass or gold. But the tradition continues, and the piece that I have here is probably one of the most important pieces to show that that tradition continues on 1,000 years later. The museum has some wonderful Chola bronzes, and if you haven't seen them in the Wadamo Gallery, please do go see them. They're extraordinary pieces. But that tradition continues, and at some of the same level. So I had this friend, and he was at the art school, and he asked if I would like to meet some of the Stabatis. And Stabati is a caste that makes these statues, and they are very playful. They said our caste stats is actually higher than the Brahmins because we make the gods. And so they actually do make the gods in this same tradition, the lost wax tradition, in which the artist works in wax, and then on top of the wax is put a clay level with shoots, and the metals is put into and melts the wax, and then the clay mold is cracked, and some final work is done on the actual metal figure. So I went to the, can we put Shiva and Parvati over there, or everyone can see that? Shiva and Parvati is looking at us. So can everyone see the piece? Okay. So I saw Shiva and I saw Parvati, and I said, could you possibly put the 2 pieces onto one platform? And they said, yes, we would love to do that. And so they have Shiva and Parvati dancing together, which is not an icon that they had used before, but they loved the idea of it. And you can see it there, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it. But I want to just move the computer a little to show one other piece below it. Okay, so this other piece I just wanted to show you was done by a friend of mine who was studying bronze casting in Madras, in the capital city. And she was doing contemporary pieces in the same lost wax tradition. And I studied Veena, the instrument there, for 3 or 4 years. And so she did a wax of my my playing of the vina, and it brings back all of those wonderful memories while I was there. And I just want to reiterate that what's important about these pieces is in India, as is not the case in so many places, these traditions are kept alive and at the same level of quality that you would see even 1,000 years ago. So those are my pieces, and happy to answer any questions after.
Very cool. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I didn't know that you were from Berkeley. I'm from San Francisco, so we have
are
the area
you?
folks in the house.
I went to Berkeley High, and Cal, and long tradition there. I was the last person to leave. My family had been there 100 years. So when I left for graduate school, I was the last one in the family to leave.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And our final presenter will be Ellen Carson. Ching-Jen has a little intro to Ellen's presentation. So she'll take it away first, and then Ellen, once she's finished, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jetty. So yeah, just wanted to make a quick announcement. So Ellen is going to be presenting some quilts that she's been making out of some exquisite kimono fabric. And she had reached out to us in an effort and wanting to collaborate to encourage some fundraising for the museum and advocacy for the museum. And so she will be generously donating several of her pieces to the museum. And as a result, we're going to encourage some practices for you to potentially participate in to help us with this effort. So there are 3 ways to participate. One, if you are interested, we would love for you to consider upgrading to any of the other levels from collectors through fellows, and you would receive a quilt. The second way to participate would be to recommend a friend to join at the collector's level or higher, and you as a recommender would then receive a quilt. And lastly, the third way to participate, we would love to encourage new donations of $1,000 or more. And if you know anyone or you would like to do that and contribute, then you would be receiving a quilt as well. And it will last from now until December 31st while supplies last. She's taking a lot of time to do all of these by hand, and she's just really generous with her time and her talent to really advocate and really try to support the museum during this difficult time period. We'll be doing some more announcements, but this is, her kickoff, and thank you so much to Ellen for really thinking of us. So thank you. If anyone has any questions, I can answer them later, or you can put them in chat. Just let me know.
Thank you, and aloha. As a way of brief biography, okay, can you hear me now? Yes, okay, I'm saying aloha. As a brief bio, I'm a retired attorney and now doing a lot of community advocacy work in regards to homelessness, affordable housing, equality, and justice issues. My husband Bob and I moved into this condo that's just a block away from the museum, and we have really enjoyed getting to know it better and participating in Think and Drink. So it's delightful to be with all of you. I've been asked to share one of my kimono quilts for our program tonight. Bob and I have come to love Japan, and I love textiles. So the combination and result is that I have just a fascination with the stunning kimono silks that Japan has. And every time we go to Japan, I come home with a load of oodles of kimono silk. So I'm using my pandemic time in isolation to be able to use those to be able to make new artwork that I just so enjoy and want to be able to share with you tonight. So I'll move at this point onto a screen share. Okay, and okay, is that visible? Yep, okay, thank you. Let's see, I've entitled this one, I've Got the Blues for Japan, as I look forward to when we can next take a trip to Japan. It's made from over 25 different fabrics, mostly silk kimono. The fabrics in this one include scenes from old woodblock prints of Japan, a hand-painted waterfall scene, the iconic Great Wave, and some Japanese tie-dye called shibori, and I'll be talking more about that in a minute. So what is the thing, the kimono? Kimono means simply a thing to wear. It's one of the most exquisite and iconic national costumes in the world and reflects the heart of Japan and its culture. For over 500 years, until the 1950s, the kimono was the dominant garment for men and women, for young and old, for rich and poor, summer and winter. It's managed to be both traditional, but modern, artistic, but functional. And this is a firefighter's jacket, so very functional. What other garment's been able to retain its same basic shape and dominance in fashion for over 500 years, much less provide such astounding flexibility for both function and artistic expression? Today, it's still frequently used as formal wear, for ceremonial costumes, for even retro fashion. And indeed, it still is just a thing to wear on a fun day out with friends. So in contrast to our Western fashions that emphasize the curves in a person's shape, the kimono treats the body shape as irrelevant, and it creates a garment with entirely straight lines. If you think this would make the garment boring, you would be mistaken. It's a palette on which to create beautiful artistic design and involves with the culture to display a dizzying array of art. Like many other forms of art, Japanese take a simple functional item, here garment, and raise it to be an exquisite piece of art. These last two kimono, in fact, have been on display in our Smithsonian Museum and are by Ichiku Kuboto. I want to next share some of my favorite types of kimono fabric design methods, and they all start with these little critters. This is the result of the lowly silkworm. Silk cocoons are unwound, then many silk filaments are twisted together to create silk threads, which are then used to weave the silk kimono fabrics. And one of my very favorite types is called shibori, which means pressing or dyeing. It's a tie-dye process. And it's made by tying knots or using other pressing method to restrict the dye on certain types of the fabric. As many as 30 knots may be hand-tied per square inch, each uniform in size and often square in shape. Now that should boggle your mind. It requires an artisan of many months just to make one shibori garment. This is another process that boggles my mind. It's called Kasuri. It is the silk threads in each thread of the warp and weft being pre-dyed before even being put onto the loom to create specific intricate patterns. And the artisan must know in advance exactly how and where the threads will be interwoven to create these dye patterns. And finally, Yuzan, which is a hand-painted and dye-resist method with picturesque patterns. Rice paste is used to hand draw the designs on the silk or to resist the dye, and then it's hand-painted and dyed with different colors to create the design areas. You may ask, why do I take such a beautiful 3D garment and make it into 2D artwork? Well, sadly, thousands of kimono are now being discarded in Japan. Some have stains or wear, but others appear perfect. I enjoy recycling them into pieces like this so that others here, particularly in the West, can enjoy their beauty. I designed my kimono kilts to show off some of the best parts of dozens of kimono to honor and celebrate the remarkable work that goes into creating them. And now that you've seen a few of the reasons why these garments are such breathtaking pieces of art, I want to explain the process that I use for making kimono quilts. First, I need to acquire a kimono, and the fun part of this is that I love to go to temple sales in Japan. They have thousands of discarded vintage kimono and other antiques. Imagine our Byodo-in temple in Kahalu, quiet virtually every day of the month, but on the patron saint holiday each month, The grounds are filled with 1,000 vendors of food, antiques, ceramics, and collectibles. That's a temple sale. Next comes deconstruction. I take a kimono that looks like this beforehand and rip it apart. Did I mention that kimono are entirely straight? Whoops, sorry. This photo is indeed proof. These are the deconstructed kimono parts, and it takes about 12 yards of 14-inch wide silk to fabric to create each kimono. Then I cut each kimono into pieces about 4 inches wide and create complementary groups of colors, looking for pieces that can be a focal attraction in each quilt. It's been a challenge during the pandemic isolation to find enough silk to supply the color ranges that I need for the volume of silks I'm making. So my sewing sisters have come to the rescue with silk donations and have dyed other colors by using my laundry room, since I live in a condo, and converting it to become a dye booth. There we go. And it makes all these colorful colors and patterns. The dyes bring out the subtle designs that are almost invisible on the original white fabrics. Well, creating the design layout for each quilt's the most challenging artistic process. I need to decide how to use about 20 to 50 different fabrics that I may have in a complementary color group. I try to choose a layout to include dark and light highlights, pieces of shibori, and often a focal point of scenes from old Japan. Once I've decided what fabrics and shapes to use in each vertical strip, I cut the shapes of fabric I want, mount them onto a strip of interfacing which stabilizes the silk and gives it strength, and then I use decorative stitching to sew the pieces together securely and then sew the strips together. Finally, I cut out backing fabric as well as batting and stuffing to create the 3 layers necessary for quilting, and then I sew the 3 layers together and attach a border onto the quilt, and voila, a new quilt is born. Blue is indeed my favorite color, but I try hard not to discriminate. So I'm working on other color groups as well. This one is autumn with the colors of the Momeji maple leaf viewing. And this next one is called Sakura, which you may know is the colors of cherry blossoms in the springtime. This one is winter with the whites, blacks, and reds. And for this one, I love the little geisha face that's in the center, looking them all over. And this one's just a purple celebration in honor of my mom. It's her favorite color. Well, some kimono fabric that I find sometimes has special significance. This one, for example, was from a wedding kimono from a friend, and I've made it into a religious stole. Another friend gave me one of their mom's family kimono that was in tatters, and for it I made a wine bottle cover for their memory. I love and respect the kimono, so I recycle the smallest of scraps. This quilt has diagonal strips that are made from scraps. And indeed, it's hard for me even to throw away a 2-inch piece of shibori. So I've used them to make buttons out of the tiniest scraps to make shibori jewelry. The last quilt I'll share is one I called Fukushima that I made as a memorial to the resilience of the people of Japan following the Fukushima disaster. It seems particularly appropriate to me for these pandemic times as we watch events around us that we cannot control, while seeking to find the physical and emotional resilience to survive and flourish as an individual and as a community. Well, a final and major reason I enjoy making these quilts is that it's something I can do to help the community. I donate my quilts to support charities that touch my heart and that address our community's needs. These quilts have so far this year raised over $30,000 to support IHS, our homeless shelter, and now I'm offering them as gifts to HOMA as a way to thank others who give generously to this wonderful museum. So thank you for the opportunity to present.
Thank you, Ellen. That was wonderful. This is Faye.
Oh, thank you.
I was able to get in.
Oh, good. You can go back to speaker views.
anyone have any questions for any of our three presenters? Or comments?
I think Susan, you want to unmute yourself?
Okay. Well, I had first a question from Matt. I wondered what were the materials that this.
Oh yes, actually it was acrylic on canvas.
And you couldn't roll it up to just carry it home? No.
I could have, but honestly, I was in Asia and Australia for 3 weeks. I couldn't do it. I just knew it would be too much. So had I gone to Australia with the intent of buying things, I would have brought less. But I was committed to jettisoning things, you know.
Okay. So
all's well that ends well.
Yeah, I wondered what it was because sometimes they do them on fabrics and they do them on, but they're just amazing artists. I think the Australian Aborigines. Yeah.
And I have to say too, if any of you are looking for local framers, I have high praise for Art Source and Designs on Sand Island. They were they were not inexpensive, but they were so high quality.
That's Art
Source and Designs on Sand Island.
They've done good work for me too. I really like their work.
Richard? Richard? I have a question for you.
Yep.
Did you meet the artists that made this? Do you know?
Yes. I was saying I asked the Stabatis and I did meet them. I was actually my friend who was teaching at the art school nearby, but I did meet them, and then the piece behind me, which is a Nataraj, maybe people have seen that image of Shiva dancing. I also met the artist when I got this more recently, about 5 years ago. Last time I was in India.
The last time you were here, there.
In India, yeah.
Yeah.
But the other Shiva and Parvati are about 50 years old.
Okay. The Shiva part, that's 50 years old.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they extremely heavy?
Yes, very heavy. I don't know how they got back. I do know how they got back, but I was fortunate, and they're very hearty. These Chola bronzes are 1,000 years old. They're still with us, so.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. So you think this one does not have gold in it, but it has silver and.
Sorry, yeah, it does not have gold and silver. It does have brass, lead, and copper.
Brass, lead, copper. Okay.
Only the really fine pieces would have gold and silver in them.
Okay.
But that's panchalokam, the 5 metals. They're called panchalokam.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ellen, do you? Go ahead. Ellen, do you always make them in the same shape, or do you make your quilts in different shapes?
The ones I've been making during the pandemic have been primarily with the kimono silk and the shape of the kimono, or the square one you saw that had the geisha face poking out.
Right. Yeah.
Which still had a kimono shape within the borders. I've made many other quilts that have been in different shapes and more traditional, such as Hawaiian quilting or those types of things.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
But I'm always looking for ideas. So if anyone has great ideas for quilting, you're always welcome to pass them on.
Okay.
Ellen Torrey just says, I really like that you maintain the proportions of the kimono.
Oh, nice.
Right.
Thank you. It's a lovely shape.
It is. Mhm.
It really is. So it's fun preserving that, and that way I don't have to worry about what to put behind it for a background.
And how do you hang them?
They're just on a simple rod, often as light as a cafe rod or something. The quilt itself probably only weighs 1 to 2 pounds, so it can take
Okay.
they all have a sleeve on the back that I've sewn in that's made for hanging
Yeah.
in the wall.
Oh, you put the sleeve on. Okay, good.
So there's almost no wear and tear on the fabrics because it's
Mhm.
supported all the way over.
Ellen, this is Karen in the same building as you are. I never see you. I think it's because your work is absolutely gorgeous. I'm wondering how you keep the fabric from slipping around, because silk isn't the easiest
It's
textile
terrible.
to work. I know. So how do you do it?
Okay, I mentioned that there's interfacing, which is a fusible, non-woven substance that one can buy by the yard, and it needs to be ironed onto the interfacing, and it is like a glue, and then it glues it to the background. And then, only then do I cut it out and try to sew it. Otherwise, it's like having an octopus under your presser foot of the sewing machine. It will not behave, it will just totally distort itself, and it's miserable to work with otherwise. But with interfacing, I'm very happy. So I'm buying dozens of yards of interfacing during the pandemic, along with lots of other sewers that are competing for the same scarce supplies.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, my name is Faye, and I'm part of Ellen's quilting group. And what she's presented you today are only two very small things of multifaceted quilting projects and abilities. She's extremely prolific. She has wonderful ideas. She works with different media. And the most important thing is she's the most generous person when it comes to sharing her quilts. Her charity donations exceeded, as she said, $30,000 in this recent 3 months. And it's as long as I've known her, which has been about 25 years, she's always done just tremendous benefit to the community. I just wanted to add that.
It's a great sewing circle. Elizabeth Kent's on too from the circle. Wonderful artist.
We may have our first person who's participating. So Ellen, Matt's gonna be interested and gonna talk after offline about potentially.
Purple is my favorite color. Again, I looked at it and said,
oh, it's
20 minutes later, it's still in my head.
Okay, I'll donate that one to the museum then.
With pleasure.
I'm still needing to decide which ones to donate. So.
No, I love that. That was in my head immediately.
Purple's a great color.
Yay! Thank you both. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Chin, I want to ask Matt the title of his work. Seated yam. What does that have to do with the painting? With his work.
Okay, that's a great question. Let me come back. I am here. I just had it up. I'm gonna read. I actually had a summary of the painting I was gonna read during my presentation, but
okay.
I wanted to honor the 10-minute time because we all know I'm a chatterbox.
We have time now, so.
You know, to be honest, in her summary, she doesn't say. I'm guessing these are just, you know, yams growing in the wild, and that's what she saw. But there's really no other information about it. The information I have here is just more about her background.
Tell us her background.
I'm sorry? You just cut out.
Tell us about her. Would you tell us
about her? Sure. I can read her profile. Her name is Louise Numina. Let's see. And Louise is one of 6 sisters and 3 brothers. She went to primary school at Sterling Station near Tennant Creek. She later studied at a college in Alice Springs. When she returned to Sterling Station later, Louise worked with the community development program. She started painting in '81 after being taught by her aunties, Gloria and Kathleen, who are well-known Aboriginal artists. Louise has lived in Darwin since '95 when she began studying at a local college, achieving a diploma in fine arts. Louise's works have been featured in exhibitions in Darwin, Sydney, and Brisbane since 2011. Her work has now been collected for over 15 years. And she's adorable. There's a picture of her with the painting that I wish I could post, but I just have to say I'm blown away that a painting that large with that much detail was so affordable. And I'm reluctant, put it this way, the cost of the painting, shipping, and framing was less than it cost to be a collector, which I think is pretty amazing. Because I think being a collector at the Honolulu Museum of Art is a deal and very fairly priced for the access that we get as patrons. So they're out there. I mean, that's why, and I'm so glad that it wasn't a price sensitive situation. I just saw the piece and felt like I had to have it. That I just was like, wow, that's it. So I'm fortunate it was affordable.
Thank you for sharing your thought process, Matt, because I think all of us have gone to places away from home where we have to make that difficult decision of, oh, wait, I've just started looking. Surely there's going to be more like this. How do you decide
Right.
to get it
But
done?
yeah.
And I loved how you went through that.
Thank you. No, and thank you for saying that. Yeah, because it was interesting. Like I actually texted my partner from Darwin. He was home in Hawaii, and I was like, "What do you think?" And he was just like, "Do it." So right. So it's all right. I'm not living alone. So it is a shared decision, but also too, like I would say once a year for about a decade, we talked about that missed opportunity in Queensland and how silly we were for thinking there would be more. And we were actually in Western Australia last year outside of Perth, and we didn't see anything that was remotely as interesting. So glad we pulled the trigger.
It's
Corey,
beautiful.
did you want to comment on anything? You can join in.
Well, I just like that Matt has a 20-minute waiting period. Because if he doesn't think about it for 20 minutes, you'll think about it for the rest of your life, right?
Well, you know, and the reason for that is that, you know, for those of you who are astrologically inclined, I'm a Capricorn. So I am of the school of blink. I can almost be too decisive. Right. You relate. And so if you don't do that, then, you know, it can get ugly. So yeah, I've learned I need an accountability loop for myself.
Well, my problem in Japan at the temple sales has always been that everything is so reasonably priced that the big issue is not whether to buy it, but how in the heck can I get this home? And will my husband still stay with me if I come with another 100 pounds of kimono for the day? He's been so sweet about helping haul them home. All those beautiful silks.
And if I may ask,
Ellen,
like,
do you bring? Oh, sorry. I was just wondering if you bring
I'll wait.
empty suitcases or something when you go to Japan, or just.
I take extra body bags that are really about the size of a body, or those fiberglass ones you see in Chinatown that are huge. And I'll fold 2 or 3 of those. We go over with just carry-on luggage, and we come home with big bags with kimono. Yeah.
I mean, are you able to use all the silk that you purchase in some form of or another?
I try to use every part of the garment, and
Cool.
some I use up completely because I just love them, and others are still being used for background or something, so it rotates over time. And Faye and Elizabeth are 2 of my sewing sisters on right now, and both of them have come to me with more silk so that I can help round out a color group that really needs more colors before I can do it justice. And so that's just been tremendous to have help from friends to donate the silk so I can be able to use more of it. But my husband will tell you, I still have quite a bit in my closet at this point because people have been so generous sharing with me.
That's great. Well, you're really talented.
Oh,
so thank you for sharing your art with us.
It inspires me. Kimono.
I think we need to do a pet show until next, because I see Patricia's cat there. Looks so cute.
Wow.
Matt, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Matt, your slides, actually the last slide, the picture of the cranes, was it cranes or birds? I thought it was pretty striking. So, was that Australian or can you tell us a little bit about that slide? Or
Sure. So it was all from the Readback Aboriginal art bookstore in Darwin. And so it was actually, that wasn't actually a picture of something that was on site at the Mindle Beach night market when I was there. It was on their website, but I'm happy to share a link to the bookstore in Darwin. And should you be inspired to pursue that piece or one like it, that'd be great.
Okay.
So I'll send that to Jetty afterwards. But yeah, I was just, they were so gracious and the prices were so fair and the quality of work was so good. So I'm glad you were inspired by that.
Yeah, is that considered a part of Australian art, that type of style, and I the lines were sharp and clean, colors vivid, it's almost like Japanese
Yeah, definitely.
arts,
Yeah, because I would say that was that's why I wanted to sort of show the sort of dot matrix style, which sort of appeals to me and my sort of modern abstract sensibilities. But I loved the range, and I loved that it had, to me, more earthy, more deliberate expression through the other pieces. So it was just really a range for everyone. We all have our own aesthetic, but I'm glad that appealed to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was striking too. I love the colors of that piece too. Just the structure of it.
Yeah.
Red. It's just really memorable.
Yeah.
Any last questions, comments?
Well, good job, Jetty.
Yay, Jetty.
Good job, everybody. Great job to the presenters.
Thank you,
You guys
Ellen,
carried the event for me.
It was a great idea, and thank you for pulling it together. It's like really, really great. Thank you so much.
We're really glad to do it. I did have a follow-up question. If we continue to do these presentations, is still this time and date okay? The third Thursday, 5:30 to 7, everybody can expect to still have that on their calendar every month? Okay, great. That is good to know. In a few months' time, Tori is going to come back and do a little presentation with us. So I'm working on the schedule through the end of the year, and then I will send that out to everybody so you know what to expect for the next few months for Think and a Drink. So we'll come back and it'll be the similar format, but we will have curators, we'll have artists. Alona will be on for one of the months, so be sure to tune in for the next few events. So I really appreciate everybody coming out and showing your faces and being a great participant.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Okay, we're gonna sign off.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.